One of the greatest challenges in affair recovery is overcoming the trauma of betrayal and all the triggers that come with it. Unless you've experienced it, it can be hard to fully understand. Some might even question whether it qualifies as trauma at all. It does, and today we're going to talk about one remedy that has helped many people find real relief. But first, I want you to hear how my guest, Laurel Toorn, describes trauma.
Trauma is less about what happened to you and more about how your brain processed it and gives you perpetual access to it. And in your reactivity to reminders of that event or series of events. Historically, we had a very narrow definition of trauma. It was something only combat veterans or survivors of sexual assault could experience. And now we know that's just not true. It's how the brain catalogs something, not what that thing was.
People have tried many things to settle the trauma that's active in their brain. Talk therapy, support groups, journaling, exercise, medication, all of those can be useful. And no single approach works for everyone. But today, I want to focus on one modality that has made a difference for many, EMDR. You've heard it mentioned in past episodes. Today, Laurel is going to give you a clear picture of what it is, why it works, and what you can expect if you choose to work with an EMDR-trained therapist. Laurel Toorn is a trauma therapist and founder of Laurel Therapy Collective. For more than a decade, she's worked with clients who carry the weight of burnout, anxiety, and unresolved trauma. Her specialty is EMDR therapy, and she's seen firsthand how it helps people break free from the neurological patterns that keep them stuck. I'm Tim Tedder, and this is episode 63 of the Affair Recovery Room podcast.
Welcome to The Recovery Room, a podcast presented by affairhealing.com.
In this healing place, in this healing place.
I want to focus on EMDR because it is something that a lot of clients dealing with betrayal and the trauma around that have found very helpful. You called it a weird modality.
It's so weird. It's so weird.
I know. I love that honesty.
Yeah.
It is kind of, I mean, when I was in graduate school and EMDR was beginning to be talked about, I heard a professor talk about what it was and what it involved. I go, oh, okay, well, that sounds kind of weird. And does it really work? Or is it just one of those placebo effects? Like, well, we're going to have you do something weird and tell you it works, and then you'll believe it works and it'll have some effect. But we know it's more than that.
Yeah, skeptics welcome. And in fact, if you don't have any kernel of skepticism heading into EMDR, what's wrong with you? Because it essentially, you move your eyes or any kind of bilateral stimulation.
It could be sound, it could be touch.
Yeah, there are a bunch of ways to do it. So very accessible in that sense. Like you don't necessarily need to have vision or hearing to benefit from EMDR. Any bilateral stimulation basically helps the brain store memories differently.
So explain what you mean by bilateral stimulation.
Side to side movement or
left, right, whatever.
Left, right,
I'm hearing
right.
things in right ear, left ear, back and forth. I'm feeling things from the right side of my body, left side of the body. My eyes are looking to the left and to the right. Yeah.
And my practice is totally virtual. So we usually are just trying to figure out what works best for the client. I don't default to eye movements just because it's a little awkward on a screen. They would have to be so close to the laptop that I would just be seeing their nostrils. So I usually start out with sound and then they tap along side to side with the sound. So I can control the sound. But yeah, it's totally weird because really I'm going to move my eyes or tap and my trauma is going to go away. That sounds ridiculous.
Do you remember the first time that you observed EMDR?
I was on the receiving end of this. And I was just kind of like, whoa, what is this? Because it feels too good to be true that you can be really activated by something. And then over the course of an hour or two or three, have zero disturbance around something very upsetting that you experienced or an upsetting body sensation or emotional state, that it gets neutralized. you don't forget it. You definitely don't forget it, and you don't lose the learnings, but you don't get activated by it. And that feels impossible to a lot of trauma survivors.
It doesn't take away the memory of an event. It just begins to diminish all of that emotional stuff that gets attached to it.
Totally.
So someone who's listening who has heard of an EMDR, maybe hearing about it for the first time and isn't quite getting, what is that? Explain to them. They come into, we can start with a virtual session, but this can happen in an office as well.
Yep.
What is going to be their experience in a session?
Yeah. Well, so the eye movements get a lot of press because it's the weird part. It's the part that makes it really unique.
Well, and that's kind of how it started out, didn't it?
Yeah.
Discovered that, hey, walking around and looking left and right, something's happening in my body.
Right. Yeah. Dr. Francine Shapiro in the 80s, she was the one that discovered it. She was, I believe, a doctoral student. And she was walking through a park in Brooklyn and thinking about something really upsetting and moving her eyes side to side across the sidewalk. And after 10 minutes, she realized she wasn't upset anymore. And she said, I got to go figure out what that was. And lo and behold, 40 plus years later, we have this very well-established protocol that has been empirically validated hundreds of times in peer-reviewed medical studies. But what it actually looks like in a session is going to depend on what phase of EMDR you're in. It is an 8-phase protocol. The side-to-side stuff is not in every phase, right?
Okay.
So phase 1, your EMDR therapist is going to get a really thorough history of your life, right? Because we don't want to start processing, let's say, a car accident, and then it turns out you were a 9/11 survivor, and then that memory gets triggered. We want to know kind of what are the themes and the major trail markers in your life. It really helps us with our case conceptualization and making sure that you have a safe experience with us. So that's phase 1, is just the history. That can be one session for someone that's had I'm going to say a boring life, but a relatively simple life. I've also had people that really want to tell their story, and it takes up several months. And it's really a connective part of establishing a relationship with your EMDR therapist. Phase 2 is resourcing. Resourcing is getting you ready, giving you tools and skills to tolerate the intensity of processing. It's like the old Steve Martin joke, how to be a millionaire. Step 1, get $1 million. Even in EMDR training for therapists, they say, well, first you resource the client and then you move on to targeting. But resourcing, honestly, for some people, that is the juice. That is what they really need. They need skills. They need a physical sense of what does it feel like to be safe and protected and nurtured by a fictional other being or an imagined other being, or connecting to their experience of what it was like, let's say with a grandparent or an auntie or someone in their life, or even, the family dog, maybe, if they didn't have a person. Connecting with that feeling, grounding in that sense of safety and connection. Because if we can feel a sense of safety and connection, we're going to have a lot more success processing the difficult stuff. Unfortunately, a lot of EMDR therapists really skimp on this preparation phase. And for us, it's half the juice. It's half of the reason to do EMDR. I just saw a client earlier today. I won't give any information, of course, but we had only done some deep resourcing last time. And this client was like, Laurel, I'm sleeping. We hadn't touched the trauma. It was just the resourcing that helped with that. So really can't be overdone. And then from there, you move into targeting. Targeting is figuring out what memories or sensations or emotional states you're going to process with EMDR. What is the challenging, disturbing thing?
For people in betrayal, a lot of times it's just all the triggers that ignite that feeling of risk, or fear, or pain, or whatever.
Yeah, and it's often something that might be a little surprising. Everyone's target's a little bit different. We have a fantastic EMDR consultant, because any EMDR therapist should be in ongoing consultation with someone that is qualified by EMDRIA, which is the governing body of EMDR therapists. Engaging in that ongoing consultation is really kind of a bare minimum, because it's a complicated modality. She shares this story all the time. She was in a major car accident in India, And for her, the target wasn't the accident itself. It was the next day when someone said, yeah, if you'd been 6 inches to the right, you would have been in body bags. That was the trigger for her. And that was what she needed to process. Everyone's target is a little bit different. It wasn't the moment of collision. It was realizing, oh, I almost died. So targeting needs to be done very precisely in a really safe relationship with your therapist. And most people do have like a handful of targets. Now, maybe you don't want to get to all of them. Maybe there's one that, you know, like, man, if I could take that one out, I feel like I'd be living a better life.
So the targets are those experiences or events that evoke the response that's problematic in your life.
Yeah. And sometimes people come in and they're not able to fully remember what it was. That's okay. A good EMDR therapist can work with that. We can even just work with a body sensation or a vague kind of image or emotional state. That happens often with the kind of younger experiences that were traumatic, that there isn't that crystallized memory.
Okay.
The cool thing about targeting is that if you find the right memory, sometimes it takes out a whole string of memories with it. So let's say you have a theme of betrayal in your life, and it started with, let's say, an early experience of, you know, a parent said they were going to be home and would be at your birthday party, and they weren't, right? Now, as an adult, you logically know, like, well, I was okay. Like I was not in danger, right? But you also have a physical reaction to that, like, oh, someone didn't show up for me. Someone really let me down. And then something happens in adulthood and that wound gets reopened.
And maybe not even realizing that that's being reopened.
Absolutely. And EMDR therapists have ways of helping you go back and figure out what is that first or worst memory in this chain.
So Laurel, you know, you're getting into stuff that I know when I started working on my own things that I needed to figure out, why do certain feelings erupt in me and where is that coming from? The things you're suggesting, I didn't even want to acknowledge that.
I know.
Yeah, come on. That was when I was a kid. It wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, I work with clients that have big stories like, okay, that's traumatic. My story wasn't so bad. And yet that eventually learning like, oh, but they were significant and they took root in me in a way that continued to affect me in ways I didn't even understand.
Yeah. Our early experiences really shape some of our programming, right? But the great news is our brain is so malleable. I don't care how old you are. Like the brain is plastic. The brain can adapt and update scripts. And you can go back and heal that 6-year-old birthday party memory. And it will also resolve other betrayals.
Okay, so nothing you've talked about so far seems weird. What's the weird part?
The weird part is the side to side eye movement or tapping or
So clients aren't just sitting there and doing that. They're doing it while they're processing these old memories or these events.
Yes. And I have to say, just because they're out there and they're everywhere, there are apps that claim to be EMDR apps. Do not do that. Do not do that.
Yeah.
If you really want to use some like bilateral tones or something,
or tapping or whatever.
Or tapping.
Yeah.
Think about a strong positive memory, like a beautiful sunset you saw, or like a moment of deep connection with a dear friend or a pet, or like achieving a personal goal that felt really meaningful to you, or a calm place, or an activity you love, like surfing or cooking or dancing. Go ahead and use the binaural tones for that, but do not try and process a trauma on your own. You're setting yourself up for an unpleasant experience.
So you're sitting with a qualified therapist, either in an office or being able to do this virtually.
Yeah.
They've helped you identify these things that need to be the targets.
Yeah.
And now you're processing those, either listening to tones, going back and forth, the left ear, right ear. If you're in an office, you may be moving your eyes, following a pattern from left to right. You may be tapped or holding something in your hand that's stimulating you left and right. Or if it's virtually, maybe doing that to yourself, to something on the right side and the left side of your body.
We actually have pulsars that vibrate back and forth that we can control remotely.
Oh, see, this is weird. This is fun, though. It's weird. I want to say here now that as weird as that sounded to me, I had people that I worked alongside early in my counseling career that I really respected the work that they did. One guy especially that was really good at working with depression, anxiety, and so forth. And he decided to be trained in EMDR. And I'm going, and that seems a little bit out there. Do you think it's really effective? He said, I've read some really good stuff about it. So he went to be trained. Sometime later, I asked him, are you using EMDR? He goes, oh, yeah. I said, and is it effective? He goes, oh, yeah. He says, I'm getting things done in weeks that used to take months to complete.
Yes. Things done in months that used to take years.
Okay. Yeah. And I've had clients who have been betrayed and I know are struggling in all the pain and all the anxiety and all the fears and everything that are part of that. And I can help them in little steps, but then I'd send them over to get EMDR in another office when I was working in an office. And I just remember many times them walking out of even a first time they did the bilateral stuff and just kind of this look of amazement on their face and even hearing words like, I don't know what happened. And I don't want to make something sound miraculous. I don't even want to claim that it works for every single person because it doesn't.
Nothing works for everyone.
But it is pretty remarkable what can be accomplished.
It is. Yeah. I also want to just make sure that we note that it's not hypnosis. You are in control the whole time. You can get up and walk out or close the Zoom at any point. Like there is no surrendering of will. Yeah. I will say that a lot of people that are successful with it, they get into a little bit of a hypnotic state, but it's totally self-induced and like they can break out of it. I just don't want people to be afraid that they won't be in control.
If you're sitting there listening to anything that's kind of repeated pattern, there's that tendency like, ooh, I can kind of enter that state of whatever, but that is different from hypnosis. Let's imagine that person that's maybe 6 months out from discovering betrayal and they're still not sleeping. They're still flooded with intrusive thoughts. What is it you want them to understand about EMDR as an option for their healing?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a magic pill. There is no magic pill, right? Psychiatry can help a little, but psychiatry can't heal trauma. Sometimes psychiatry is very helpful in stressful seasons. It's not my wheelhouse, but as far as EMDR goes, I wish it was faster, right? Somewhere along the way, people got this idea that EMDR works in just a few sessions. I would say that's true in a small percentage of cases, but that would be for a single incident, like a car accident or a natural disaster or something. But for something like this that is relational, a relational trauma is going to be more difficult than a non-relational trauma. Like we can understand that sometimes weather just happens and there are natural disasters, but when it's so personal, it is going to take some time to process. My practice offers intensives, which hopefully, someone is able to move through in a shorter period of time rather than just 1 hour a week. But, sometimes that's, all people can access. So I wish there was a magic wand I could wave. And by the way, sometimes people do EMDR with a wand, but I wish there was a truly magic wand that I could wave, but it's going to happen over time. And sometimes you might leave a session going, well, I don't know if that did anything, because it's hard to notice the absence of something, right? Jamila Jamil, a famous actress, she talked about she did EMDR and she was always afraid of the dark because something bad happened to her in the dark. And she did EMDR and she was like, I don't know about that. And then she went home, got in bed, turned out the light, and she was like, wait, I'm not afraid. So it wasn't until she was in a situation that she realized it had been effective.
Yeah. How does someone find a good EMDR therapist?
Well, we serve California and Florida.
Well, there's one option there.
But honestly, the EMDRIA directory, emdria.org, is going to have certified clinicians, because it's a little confusing, but you have EMDR trained, which there's a lot of people who are EMDR trained. EMDR certified is people who have gone a little bit beyond that, done extra training and consultation. And then if you really want to get fancy and work with someone who's an approved consultant or trainer, someone who's really made EMDR their professional life, if you really want that expert. But then also consider, do you want your therapist to have a specific lived experience or identity? Like a lot of LGBT plus people want to work with an LGBT plus therapist, or certain, totally understand why a Black woman would want to see another Black woman as a therapist. So you think about, is that something that's important to you? Do you want your therapist to have experience treating betrayal trauma? Some people, yeah, they might want that. I also think a lot of EMDR therapists could be quite successful with that trauma because we all do relational traumas.
Spell that website.
EMDRIA.org, the EMDRIA International Association.
Well, how can listeners find out more about you?
Yeah, so our website is laureltherapy.net. And we are on a couple of social media platforms. We don't really engage with clients because it's not confidential. So our website's the best way. We also have an Instagram and a Facebook. We've got a newsletter that people can sign up for and lots of blog content. We also have, if someone really wants to go through the 8 phases of EMDR, we have a webinar that's totally free. You just sign up with your email. And we created a fake client. Her name's Jessie. She's a college athlete and she sustains a potentially career-ending injury. And we walk through what EMDR would look like for her for all 8 phases. And then just talk a little more generally about what EMDR looks like and who it's a good fit for and some considerations of when would you know you're ready and what are some things you maybe want to think about that could interfere with your processing. And that's available for free.
That sounds very helpful. I'll post links to all of those resources in the episode notes so people can find them there. Laurel, thank you for spending time explaining this weird modality that I know is effective and powerful. And I hope people who haven't considered making use of it but could benefit from it might be considering it. So thank you. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, I loved getting in the weeds. Most people are just okay, what is it? Okay, you move your eyes. Okay, cool, whatever. But I love this, getting down into the details.
Good job. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to be here.